I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. This is going to be a little potpourri of a variety of topics, but I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. I want to cover a few things here. First up, I've had a few people email me saying that they've gone on to Amazon, tried to order my book, but it's currently out of stock. If that happens, please just go back to Amazon a day or two later. I tell you, my book has been selling extremely well, and thank you for everyone that has bought my book. I appreciate it. I was not expecting to sell this many books. I really was not. My publisher that prints the books is in South Carolina. They print a small stock. They print it on demand. They keep 10 or 15 books in stock at any time, but they've actually been running out of their float. And they need a couple of extra days to continue to print. It's a nice problem to have, but if you go back in a couple of days, you should be fine. And so many of you have emailed me and told me you've enjoyed the book, you've learned a lot, it's great, thank you. The one favor you can return to me, if you can, is take 2 or 3 minutes, go on to Amazon and write a review of the book. What you liked about it, what you got out of the book. I would greatly appreciate it. It's payback for me because when you do that, Amazon gives me some perks as well. They promote my book a little bit more. They link it to some different things, so it's kind of a snowball effect there. The more people that buy it and review it, the higher up the rankings I get, and they give me a little bit more promotion, which is starting to happen. But thank you very much for everyone that's bought it and has reviewed it so far. Second housekeeping tip I want to give you guys. I put a notice on my YouTube blog about a month ago saying that due to high demand, high comments that I'm getting now, I simply cannot respond to very many people in the comment section anymore. I'm sorry. As you guys know, this YouTube channel for me isn't a business for me. This is just a little side thing I enjoy doing. I'm a full-time working realtor, and people know I'm busy. So whenever I can, I'll try and respond to something quick. But it was okay when I was only getting 5 and 6 comments on videos a few years ago. Now I'm getting 100 comments. And so I just can't reply. And I've always said too, I kind of got into a bad habit. I said right from the beginning, I'm gonna let my videos do the talking. That's why I do the video blog. I'm not into typing responses. I'm not the greatest typist. It takes too long for me to do it, and I've kind of fallen out of that. But the other thing I'll point out to people is a lot of the comments or questions I get on there, I have pretty much every time I've done a video blog and addressed that. So I would strongly urge you people to just go back into my archives and watch some of my older videos. I've got 7 years worth of videos in here now, and I think I'm up to close to 300 that I've done. I've covered pretty much every topic that there is, and I tell you, I'll have to redo some of the older ones I've done, redo them, but I've got some gems, I think, that I did 3, 4, 5 years ago that don't have a whole lot of views. It was done before my blog kind of took off. So go into my archives, and I think you'll get a lot of good information out of there. I tell people, if you were to watch all my videos, spend a month and an hour here, an hour there, and watch them all, I'm kind of giving you a university education on real estate. You're going to know more than what most realtors know, I think. So go back to the archives. I think you'll find that a lot of the answers to some of the questions you guys get are in there. Okay, let's move on. Interesting thing here that just came out a couple of weeks ago that I've been meaning to share with you guys. So there was an interesting survey that was done with the Toronto Real Estate Board. They wanted to know how many, what we call an end. So an end is either a buy or a sell. You're the listing realtor or you're the buying realtor. How many ends does the typical Toronto realtor do in 1 year? Because the numbers in Toronto, the number of realtors that are currently licensed has ballooned. It's now up to just over 50,000 realtors. And I can tell you, it's the same thing in Vancouver here. Not nearly the scale that Toronto is because it's a much bigger city. But we currently have just over 14,000 realtors in the Vancouver Real Estate Board. And then I think they've got another 5,000 or 6,000 in the Fraser Valley Board. But I can remember just 6 or 7 years ago, in Vancouver, we had about 10,000 members. Now we're at 14,000. So we had a 40% increase in realtors. Toronto has doubled. I think they had something like 25,000 licensed realtors 6 or 7 years ago, and now they're at 50, which is very typical. When a market gets on a roll like Toronto and Vancouver has, the number of realtors swells. When we get that correction that eventually is going to come and the market turns, you will see the number of realtors start to drop off. But I wanted to give you an interesting stat here. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Out of 50,000 realtors in Toronto, how many of those 50,000 do you think did not do one sale in 2017? In other words, they did not make a dime. As a matter of fact, they would have spent probably, it costs about $8,000 to $10,000 to keep your license with your errors and omissions, your desk fees, your licensing fees, your education fees every year. Probably costs the typical realtor $8,000 to $10,000 just to keep a license before you even make a sale. How many out of the 50,000 did 0 sales? Take a guess. Would you believe that in Toronto, out of 50,000 realtors, 17,313 reported 0 sales for the year 2017? Now, these numbers I can tell you are based in Toronto. You can transplant these numbers, I'm quite certain, to the Vancouver market as well. Probably about a third of the realtors in Vancouver did 0 sales for 2017. Next question. How many do you think out of the 50,000 realtors did 1 sale? So they only did one end, either on the buying or selling side, and let's say they made a typical end, maybe make $8,000 to $10,000 on average. What do you think that number is? Would you believe that only 8,344 realtors did 1 sale or less? So in other words, almost half the realtors in Toronto last year, and this would probably be the same for Vancouver, half did 1 or less sales in the year. How many realtors would you say did 7 sales in 2017? Now, the reason I use 7 sales is because 7 ends will generally, you can make a living on it. It's not going to be a great living, but you can get by doing 7 ends. That might equate to $70,000, $65,000, $70,000 a year. Remember though, you've got expenses you've got to pay. You're probably looking easily at $15,000 to $20,000 in expenses, advertising, printing, flyers, website, desk fees, errors and omissions insurance, real estate dues, education, everything else. How many realtors do you think made 7 sales in Vancouver or in Toronto, but the same thing would be for Vancouver? What percentage is making a living at real estate? The number is 16.8%. And that is startling to me. 16% of realtors in Toronto are actually making a bare bones minimum. And that's bare bones. When that number goes up to 15 ends, which is you're now getting into $100,000 a year, 110, 115, before expenses though. So you're not getting rich yet. 15 ends a year in Toronto, 4.7% of the realtors are making 15 sales a year. And then when you get up into 25 ends, which is now you're making a decent living. 25 ends, you're probably making 200 grand a year, minus expenses. Maybe you're making 125, 150. That only comes down to 2.5% are doing that. So another interesting number I'll give you guys here. When I got into the business, my dad, my managing broker, I think most managing brokers in Vancouver will tell you that to become an experienced realtor, you need to do 100 deals. 100 ends and you're kind of considered an experienced realtor. You haven't seen it all, because I can tell you, a month doesn't go by when something doesn't come up in this business that I haven't come across before. But after 100 deals, you've seen a lot of it. You can handle a lot of different situations, collapse deals, things that can go wrong, problems with the lawyer, with conveyancing, with inspections. You've generally seen a lot. You haven't seen it all, though. That's what makes this business so great. You're always on your toes here. As I say, a month doesn't go by when I don't see something new that I've never experienced before. But most managing brokers will tell you that you need to do 100 ends to become an experienced realtor. But I guess these stats point out that when half the realtors are only doing 1 or less deals a year, it's going to take you 50 years to get experienced. So this is why I tell people that all realtors are not created equal. Interview multiple realtors for the job. especially when it comes to time to sell your house. When you're listing your house, you better be interviewing 2 or 3 realtors. I know you want to help your friend Bob on your beer league hockey team, but he might not be the best guy if he's only been in the business 2 or 3 or 4 years and done 5 or 6 sales. He's just not experienced enough in this market to help you. So, pretty crazy stat here, and I'm pretty certain that you can probably translate these numbers from Toronto to Vancouver. I'm quite certain the numbers are going to be very similar. That probably only half the realtors in the Vancouver Real Estate Board are doing 1 or 2 sales, and probably only about 10 or 15% are actually making a living here, a bare bones living, and probably only 2 or 3% are actually doing experienced, have got 100 deals or 200 deals under their belt and know what they're doing and are making a comfortable living. But that's the same in every business. It's the top 5 or 10% that are doing 80% of the business. One final thing. I get calls and emails from young realtors all the time asking me if I can come out for a cup of coffee or talk to them, and I'm more than happy to do it. I can, if I can spare 10 or 15 minutes, usually it's on the phone. I might be able to meet you for a cup of coffee, but they want to know about getting in the business, or some of them are in the business, they're struggling, they're having a hard time. What I tell everyone that emails me about real estate, getting into real estate and becoming a realtor is a fantastic career. I would not discourage anybody from getting into real estate. However, it is an extremely, extremely difficult business to get established in and become successful. I think some people realize that, but I think they see these shows like $1 Million Listing, which, by the way, folks, is completely scripted. Because I'll get young realtors, I think that's how things work. You're negotiating on the phone. You're driving a $200,000 Mercedes, and some realtors do here in Vancouver. But you're not doing most of that stuff is staged, it's scripted. It's not really how the business works. And I tell young realtors that if you're getting into the business, you should at least have a financial buffer for at least a year's worth of income, or a year's worth of living expenses while you get established. It's extremely difficult to get into this business and start making 80 or 100 or 150,000 in the first 2 or 3 years. Very rare. Some realtors can do it, but for most, if you can do 1 or 2 or 3 sales in the first year, you're doing fine. Set yourself a realistic goal. But most people, they come in with the expectations of doing 10 or 15 sales a year right off the bat, and they find that it's going to be a little more difficult, and they usually run out of money. They run out of money and time, and they can't see it through. So oftentimes I've got some realtors that I'm kind of taking, a little few that I'm taking under my wing here, and the best ones that are usually suited for getting in this business and being successful are generally a little bit older. They're in their mid-40s. Some of them are already kind of financially stable. They don't need to get into this business to make sales right away. They can take their time, do it the right way, learn the business, and they're not under the gun to make a commission right away. Those are the ones that usually make it, in my opinion. The ones, though, that are, tight on money, need to make sales, you're kind of forcing yourself, gripping the hockey stick too tight, as they say. So, but it's a fantastic business to get into, but you need a financial buffer to get into this business. It's expensive. As I say, it's going to cost you $8,000 to $10,000 a year, every year, before you even make a sale. So you need to make 1 or 2 sales just to break even, let alone make any money. So you have to plan for this business. You have to have a nest egg, some money aside, or maybe even a side job. There's nothing wrong with that. In the old days, you had to be a realtor full time. It was part of your licensing. Now you can work a part-time job while you get your feet under you in real estate. Just make sure you don't rely on that part-time job too long. You have to commit to real estate. You have to learn the business, put the time in. Otherwise, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. But it is a tough business to get into. One final thing I want to talk about here, last topic here. I had a guy send me an ad for this big Toronto real estate show. And this has been going on for a few years. And they have this big extravaganza that they hold at the Toronto Trade and Convention Center. It draws like 10 or 15,000 people. And, they have a kind of a celebrity guest list that they bring, and entertainment and music. But most of it is really, I have to cringe when I see these things. And I think most realtors, most investors, real investors, not speculators, cringe when they see this too, because this isn't about real estate investing, these big real estate show they put on. This is about speculating. And by the way, so this year's show, just to tell you, he sent me the flyer for this thing. This year they've combined the real estate investor show with a Bitcoin expo. And the lineup of guests, they had the same guy last year, Pitbull, the singer Pitbull, Sylvester Stallone, I don't know what he has to do with real estate or Bitcoin. They've got a couple of Dragon's Den people that are going to be on there. Alex Rodriguez, the baseball player. And they're going to have seminars, of course, on buying and flipping properties, flipping pre-sales. There's always that the old standby about buying homes with no money down. I've done blogs on that before. You know, this stuff, I have to cringe when I see this. And then in the afternoon session, you can go learn a little bit about Bitcoin as well. Listen, this stuff is not investing in real estate. This is speculating in real estate. The only ones that are making money on these big extravaganzas are the promoters that are putting this on, and you're paying $125 for a ticket. You're not going to learn anything of use at an expo or a seminar like this. Trust me. This week it's a 2-day event. You know, they've got some motivational speakers. Maybe you'll get some decent motivational talk there. I don't know, from Pitbull or Sylvester Stallone. But you're not going to learn anything about how real estate works or how to invest in real estate. How you invest in real estate is buy my book or study some of the people that have made it in real estate. It's buying and holding. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, which is what these seminars, what this extravaganza in Toronto tries to promote. How to make millions in real estate. It's not going to happen overnight. The only people that are making money on this is the promoters. So I cringe when I see these things, Bitcoin and real estate investing. Stay away from it, folks. You know, for my younger viewers, go on to YouTube and type in Tom Vu, Tomvu. And he was a 1990s infomercial guy on how to buy and flip and make millions of dollars in real estate. You'll get a good laugh out of it. There's been many a movie that's played off on the reality, on the Tom Vu character. You know, some of his lines were, you know, your friends aren't going to want you to come to my seminar to learn how to make millions. Well, your friends are all losers. Come to my seminar anyways. YouTube Tom Vu, you'll get a good laugh out of it. But this seminar in Toronto is really a takeoff on the Tom Vu stuff. It never goes out of fashion, this stuff, because there's always people, dreamers, people looking for a get-rich-quick that will plunk down 200 or 250. I think they've got some VIP passes for this thing that are quite expensive, in the hopes that they can become an instant real estate or a Bitcoin millionaire. And this is it's just a scam, folks. Sorry. There are no shortcuts to making money in real estate, and these seminars are not going to take you there, believe me. I'm Owen Bigland. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.